Welcome to the R4D series. This is a new series that I'm including here on this channel. I have always been an advocate for research and inquiry, so I thought to share some of the research that I read with you as much as I can. We know that research reports are usually long, and many educators find this as an impediment, but I think they are very important. So I am simplifying the process as much as I can here for the benefit of educators, leaders, teachers, and even parents who are interested in such a content. So feel free to share and subscribe to watch more of this content. I chose R for D to relate to R and D that we all know, research and development. And I have always noticed that research and development is still absent to a certain degree in many educational communities, even worldwide. However, it is imperative that I mention the following 5 points as a disclaimer before I start. Point number 1 is that I will be sharing here key global research findings that we can all benefit from. So these are not my own researches. Point number 2 is that the target is to drive inquiry in our school systems. Point number 3, and considering the first 2 points, there are certain limitations to take into consideration, such as country and education system related to the research spoken about today, organizations and institutions conducting the research, and their conditions respectively. So all these are taken into consideration along with time also of publications, etc. In other words, findings will mostly be related to this context of those parties. And we also have to consider time constraints as well and the partial content. Point number 4 is ethics, and ethics is paramount. So please note elements that we must also take into consideration, such as objectivity, correct information, respect to the parties involved, compliance to the laws and rules of an organization or parties involved, and responsible presentation of information. Point number 5 is dictated, of course, by point number 4, which is the citation. And citation is extremely important, and I will include it in the presentation and in the description below. So please, you are encouraged to check the citation and read the entire report for more information. I start with an overview. The research publisher is Cambridge University Press and Assessment UK, and the title of the publication is Research Matters, issue 32, autumn 2021. The number of pages, 107 pages. Time of publication, October 2021. Research tool, survey, involved group, 9 schools, 8 of them are English, 1 is Welsh, all are in the UK. The theme is Article 3 only, which is a selection of the entire research. Article 3 addresses well-being during and after school closures. And the target is to improve understanding of COVID and school closures on teachers and the support that they need. So the target here is to shed light on these research findings that can spur reflections about our own practices. How can such findings inspire us? So let's understand first well-being. Well-being is the state of living a good life in its general meaning. A major factor for well-being is agency. And by definition, agency is this ability to take action or to choose action or what type of action to take. So as the report states here, it brings together concepts from self-determination theory, from motivation theory, and self-efficacy theory. So in quick elaboration, self-determination theory, known as SDT, explains that human beings have 3 inherent psychological needs. They are competence, autonomy, and relatedness as well. The other theory, which is the motivation theory, associates our performance with our self-worth, with our mastery or excellence, with our intelligence, with our abilities and attributions. Now, of course, in the case of teachers, motivation here has 2 forms. They being motivated to teach and being able to motivate their learners, and this is very critical. Now, the self-efficacy theory actually is this particular set of beliefs that we have that determine how well we can execute a certain task. And we all know that these 3 are very important when we speak about our well-being. So Cambridge Centre for Evaluation and Monitoring, or the CEM, recruited 9 UK schools for this research, 8 English and 1 Welsh, to learn more about teachers and students' well-being during and after the COVID-19 lockdown in the UK. In this video, we are focusing on teachers' well-being in particular. And they targeted to know about the experiences and concerns of teachers during and after lockdown. So it was conducted through an online survey, and it consisted of 32 questions and 1 open-ended question. Now, it's presented on a 7-point Likert scale, and it ranged from the lowest, very negatively, to the highest, very positively. So, questions rotated around the following, and they were 16 questions for each. The first one, and I quote, during the lockdown in January and February 2021, how did the following aspects of being a teacher affect your well-being? And of course, here they meant during the second national lockdown in January and February 2021. And the second set of questions rotated around, and I quote, currently, how do the following aspects of being a teacher affect your well-being, end quote. And this is the second set of questions that were conducted in May 2021. So the survey and the questions actually were based on Collie's Teacher Wellbeing Scale, or the TWBS. And Rebecca Collie is an associate professor in educational psychology at the University of New South Wales in Australia. And she developed this scale for well-being in 2014 and then enhanced it in 2015 to become what we know as Teacher Wellbeing Scale, the TWBS. And this assesses 3 factors of teachers' well-being, actually related, of course, to the workplace: organizational well-being, workload well-being, and student interaction well-being. Organization well-being, this relates to the environment or the culture in which the teachers work in, the relationships also with the colleagues in school, in day-to-day hustle. The workload well-being, it's the workload and the pressure that teachers face, such as naturally teaching, also marking, and other administrative work they are asked to do. And the student interaction well-being, the interaction with the students behavior and motivation, and naturally the classroom management. So general notes here about the research is that 54 responses only were recorded, and most of them were dominated by 3 schools. The schools were classified school A, B, and C, and each formed their own group. And there was another group which wasn't classified, so it was called other group. To avoid, of course, comparing groups of responses from the same school with those of the individuals. And there were also more female teachers from all ages, and there were also more experienced teachers than average experienced in arts, humanities, STEM, and other subjects. So if we go quickly over those results by time period, as per Collie's tool, those 3 factors, and here we mean the organizational, student interaction, and workload, were assessed by time period. Now you will notice in the middle, the line here, which is 4 here, is the neutral. It's neither positive nor negative. And this means if we look carefully at the figure over here, we notice that the organizational well-being and the student interaction well-being were positive both during and after the lockdown. After the lockdown, both were high. Workload was or did not mark much positive, and it's very clear it did not mark much positive responses, but it was very slightly higher during the lockdown than after lockdown. Now, if we think about the results by years of experience, now this aspect here is critical because here it involves responsibilities of the workforce. We know that in the workplace, there aren't only teachers, but there are also leaders, head teachers, for example. So those head teachers are most likely the most experienced. And here we can see that there is a huge discrepancy in the organizational well-being between the 0 to 5 and the 220 plus. You can easily see that in the figure. Now, when we look at the student interaction, it marked the most positive actually, and it increased with years of teaching experience. That was very clear. And the workload well-being was the opposite here, especially in those mid-experience ranges. And you can see that it was not linear. It was decreasing in the middle, between the beginners and the most experienced teachers. As for the results based on the gender, there was not much affect by the gender as by the first two aspects. The report actually noted that male respondents were skewed towards more years of teaching experience, because it was recorded that 38% of male respondents had 21 experiences more than the 27% of female respondents. Now, I also personally noticed actually that with the organizational and student interaction well-being results, they became more positive after the lockdown. And this is probably due to them being more adaptive to the situation. So there were also some interesting findings related to the entire experiences, and that we can call them the major themes. And those major themes to be considered, and we can see them here in the Venn diagram, relationship between the teachers' areas of concern, the number of times each theme arose is given in brackets. So those major themes were reached as a result of the open-ended question. Now, what teachers thought would improve their well-being as teachers. Now, this is very interesting because it was expected that teachers would speak only about the challenging of teaching online versus in person or blended learning, and the challenges after the return to school. But it was not the case. Actually, the teachers mentioned several and general issues that had greater effect on their well-being. And I am sharing here with you some of those quotes by teachers. For example, and all these are quoted: better communication between senior leaders and staff, coordination between different senior levels about what is due when, or time to deal with emails and communication, time to action these, more time to really develop personal support for individual students, time to work with my colleagues to develop teaching and learning. Giving teachers time to teach with support and without interference would help every teacher's well-being. They also mentioned GCSE examinations as well. This year, not doing the job of a GCSE examination marker who gets paid to do this. I am doing their job about 4 times over, trying to get the evidence together. Having more staff, we are continually understaffed for no discernible reason, and this means we are all stretched to miss breaks, struggle to make and to mark and set work, teach our own classes to more than an adequate level, and miss planning lessons. Although COVID restrictions have been lifted, it is being used as an excuse not to bring in supply teachers. However, this never happened before COVID and therefore is not valid. Improved support for the more demanding pupils' behavior, the SEN or special educational needs requirements, especially where no LSA or learning support assistant has been allocated, allowing business A-level students to take their exams online and to stop using paper assessments. Continuous assessment of key aspects would make teaching less onerous and stressful for me to complete the syllabus on time. A work from home day every now and then on a lighter day, perhaps, to catch up on administrative related activities, particularly since teaching can still be to a good standard. Better pay. So those were quickly some of the phrases that were noted. And this is the end of the research findings, Article 3 in particular of the report. So now we come to the grand questions. How can such findings inspire us? And here we are thinking, of course, of those focus of inquiries in our schools: organizational well-being, workload well-being, and student interaction well-being. And here, it's a very good opportunity that we ask ourselves, no matter what educational system we are in, whether it's the British, the American, the German, French, or national curriculum, that doesn't matter, because these are facets that we all experience in our schools. So this might trigger some interesting questions. For example, which of the 3 has or have more effect on teachers' well-being in our schools? Which has less negative impact on teachers' well-being? in-person, online, or blended modes of learning? Did teachers' well-being impact student motivation and engagement in learning? And we have seen that most of us, and including parents, noted that their children were not motivated the way they were before. To what extent is teacher agency present in our schools? And this is a very critical question. To what extent are teachers acknowledged in our schools? And of course, here I leave the space for more questions that you might come up with, because the subject is very wide. We end with a driving conclusion question, what we can call the takeaway question. What can we do to support teachers' well-being in terms of organizational well-being, workload well-being, and student interaction well-being? A research may not solve all concerns, but it can drive reflection and action. To solve issues at grassroots level, transparency must come first. Reflection must come second. That's when conscious actions can confidently step in. I think this is the best thing to say as a reflection to whatever we have just learned together. So let's stay in orbit, moving calmly, but reflecting. Let's develop and grow. And if you like this series, please subscribe and press the like button so we can have more of these videos. Thank you very much. Let's develop and grow.